The police said my son's fingerprints matched at a crime scene today. He died in 2020. Detective Angela Reyes called at 2:14 in the afternoon while I was restocking shelves at the hardware store where I'd worked for 18 years. Mr. Brennan, this is Detective Reyes with the Metro Police Department. We need you to come to the station immediately. Your son's fingerprints were found at a homicide scene last night. I nearly dropped the box of screws I was holding. My son Ethan had been dead for 4 years. I'd identified his body myself after the overdose that killed him in our bathroom. I'd held his cold hand at the morgue, seen the needle marks on his arms, signed the papers that confirmed he was gone. The funeral had been small because most of his friends had either died or disappeared into addiction. His ashes sat in an urn on my mantle at home. There's been a mistake, I said, my voice barely steady. Ethan died in 2020. Drug overdose. I have the death certificate. Detective Reyes went silent for several seconds. When she spoke again, her tone had shifted from professional to cautious. Mr. Brennan, we ran the prints through IAFIS 3 times. They match your son's prints from his 2019 arrest for possession. The match probability is 99.97%. We need you to come in and help us understand what's happening here. I told my manager I had a family emergency and drove to the police station with my hands shaking on the wheel. 4 years of grief had settled into a dull ache I'd learned to carry. Now that wound was ripping open again, but twisted into something I couldn't comprehend. Detective Reyes met me in the lobby. She was younger than I expected, maybe 35, with sharp eyes that studied me carefully as we shook hands. She led me to an interview room that smelled of stale coffee and fear. Another detective joined us, an older man named Frank Colby who looked tired in a way that went beyond lack of sleep. Mr. Brennan, Reyes began, pulling out a folder. Last night, a man named Gerald Voss was murdered in his home on Maple Street, shot twice in the chest. We found multiple sets of fingerprints at the scene. One set belongs to your son. She slid a photograph across the table. Gerald Voss was maybe 60, gray-haired, ordinary looking. I'd never seen him before in my life. I don't know this man, I said, and my son is dead. Has been for 4 years. Colby leaned forward. Walk us through it. When did Ethan die? What were the circumstances? I recited the story I'd told myself 1,000 times. March 15th, 2020. I'd come home from work and found Ethan unconscious in the bathroom. Needles still in his arm. I'd called 911, but the paramedic said he'd been gone for hours. The medical examiner ruled it an accidental overdose. Fentanyl-laced heroin. He was 23 years old. Reyes took notes while I spoke, but her expression remained skeptical. Did you see the body after the autopsy? She asked. I nodded. At the funeral home, Carlson and Sons on 5th Street. They prepared him for cremation. She exchanged a glance with Colby. Mr. Brennan, we're going to need documentation. Death certificate, autopsy report, anything you have, because those fingerprints are fresh. They were left sometime between 10 p.m. and midnight last night. The room tilted. Fresh fingerprints. Left last night. By a son who'd been dead for 4 years. My mind couldn't process the contradiction. This is impossible, I whispered. Colby's expression softened slightly. We understand this is distressing, but we need to explore every possibility. Is there any chance Ethan's death was misidentified? That someone else died and was cremated in his place? The suggestion felt obscene. I saw my son. I held his hand. I knew his face, his tattoos, his scars. It was Ethan. But even as I said it, doubt crept in. The body had been cold, the face slack and unfamiliar in death. Had I been too destroyed by grief to look closely? Had I wanted so badly for the nightmare to end that I'd accepted what they told me without question? Reyes pulled out another photograph. These are the fingerprints from the crime scene, and these are Ethan's prints from his 2019 arrest. They're identical. I stared at the whorls and loops, the patterns that were supposedly unique to every human being. They looked the same to my untrained eye, but I couldn't trust my perception anymore. Nothing felt real. What if someone faked his death? I asked. What if Ethan is alive somewhere? Colby shook his head. That would require falsifying medical examiner reports, death certificates, cremation documents, multiple felonies involving multiple officials. It's possible, but highly unlikely. He paused. Unless Ethan had a reason to disappear. Was he in trouble? Did he owe money to dangerous people? Was he involved in anything that would make him want to fake his death? Ethan had been an addict, yes. He'd stolen from me, lied to me, broken my heart 100 times, but he wasn't a criminal mastermind capable of staging his own death. He was a scared kid who couldn't stop using, who hated himself for what the drugs had made him become. He was trying to get clean, I said. He'd been in rehab twice. The second time seemed to be working. Then he relapsed, and it killed him. Reyes made a note. We'll need to pull the full case file from 2020. Medical examiner records, police report, funeral home documentation. In the meantime, do you have any recent photos of Ethan? Something clear that shows his face? I pulled out my phone with trembling hands and scrolled to the last photo I had of him, taken 3 weeks before he died. He was smiling, but his eyes looked hollow. I showed it to both detectives. Colby studied the image carefully. His response made my stomach drop. Full story is linked below or on my channel.